Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome, everyone. You are tuned into another amazing edition of Sanya On-Air. And how do I start off each and every single show? You guessed it. I have another great show for you. Coming up in just a few short moments, I have the creator and executive producer of the amazing series Godfather of Harlem, which is now in season 2 on the Epix channel. But before we get into this great conversation with Markuann, do me a favor. Just do me a favor. It won't cost you any money either. You know, when people ask for a favor, it's usually, can I have $50? I'm not asking that. All I'm asking is that you go across the multiple streaming platforms and find Sanya On-Air and subscribe. Make sure that you share, leave a comment, like it, do whatever you do, but engage with me across my streaming platforms. You can also visit my website, www.sanyaonair.net. So without any further ado, why don't we just get into this amazing conversation with the creator and executive producer of The Godfather of Harlem, Markuann Smith. Well, Markuann Smith, it is an absolute pleasure and joy to have you for a second time on Sanya On-Air. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Sanya. How are you?
I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm just going to leave it at that because I always like to focus on the positive, and whatever is positive, it's a lesson, and I just got to get through it. So that's all. But we're going to start this conversation. This is a meaningful conversation for me, and not only for my viewers and listeners, because as the creator and executive producer of one of my favorite shows on Epix, The Godfather of Harlem, I'm seeing an intersection between crime, politics, and the civil rights movement. So I just want to unpack those pivotal moments and milestones. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so like you, born and raised and grew up in Brooklyn, and you grew up in Far Rockaway and Harlem, New York, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, that's difficult, especially growing up in the times that we did, because we didn't see a lot of representation, especially on television and film. So going back to when you were a child, how did you maneuver and navigate through the troubling times of the 80s, and as a young boy, not seeing yourself represented on television, but somehow had a brilliant idea to enter into the world of Hollywood as a content creator? How did you do that?
Well, that's a great question. As I let my mind go back to the late 80s, 90s, television kind of saved me, to be honest with you, Sanya. Like it really kind of like, it drowned out the gunshots and the screams and everything that was going out outside. So I used to sit inside and just watch movies. I used to watch movies like On the Waterfront, Rebel Without a Cause, Urban Cowboy, Taxi Driver. You know, one of my favorite movies is by Sergio Leone. It's called Once Upon a Time in America. So these are the things that kind of like just drifted me from being in that other element. I did get caught up on that other element like a lot of young kids at my time did, but that was something like I was just really into. I was really into sports, and I was really into just television, just learning the art of creation, learning different producers, directors, you know, watching actors, you know, from everybody from Glenn Thurman to Humphrey Bogart. You know, I used to just sit there and just used to soak it up like a sponge.
I love it. I love it. You know, sometimes it isn't easy, especially for young kids during that time, the 80s and 90s, when the crime life was so prevalent. I mean, you walked out of your front door and it was like you couldn't escape it. So although you had television, and you did mention briefly that you did enter into a little bit of crime life, how did you know that you didn't want to maintain a life of crime and you wanted to go into something more positive? How did you make that shift, or how did you let that crime life go?
You know what it was? I grew up and I was a juvenile running wild. You know, I was trying to find things to do. You know, I've been through the juvenile system like Spofford, and, went away to juvenile camps, vacation. And I just had to learn how to, I read a book called Man, Child, and the Promised Land by Claude Brown. It's one of my favorite books. And it really made me kind of like realize that, this is not the end all be all. And coming back to Far Rockaway, my older brother, Timothy Brown, everybody knows him as Father MC. He actually got a record deal with Andre Harrell over at Uptown MCA Records. And he gave me the opportunity to be able to travel and see a different environment, a different world where, I was on tour with, the likes of Tupac Shakur, who was one of my good friends. Tretch from Naughty by Nature was Latifah's roadie. So we were all roadies. We were all three brown boys with dreams, kids from the ghetto that was trying to actually do better with ourselves. And my brother gave me the opportunity to travel and be able to see that, because you also have to look at this, Sanya. Growing up in an inner city community, it's only a couple of ways out. You either play basketball, you get in an AAU team and you start traveling, or for girls is, running track. You get to the Penn relays, things of that sort. Like you're trying to outrun your environment. You're trying to just say, I don't want to go back here. And I was able to get on the road with my brother and able to travel and just see the world and just like, wow, there's a bigger world than Far Rockaway. There's a bigger world than just Harlem.
Well, I'm so glad that you had that exposure. It was so crazy because as you were talking, I said, wow, this reminds me something that Tupac once said, a rose grew out of the concrete. So I'm glad that you mentioned him and that he had such an impact on your life. And I'm also glad that you mentioned your legendary rapper brother, Father MC. How is he doing?
He's doing well. I mean, he lives out in LA, out in Tarzana. He's still producing, still being creative. We come from a creative family. So whether it's music, whether it's television, it's there. We always sit back and talk about different ideas and different thoughts. And I love my brother. Like, he's out there, he's doing his thing.
So you said that he's doing some producing. Has he ever talked to you about returning back to the hip hop scene and giving us some amazing songs that we can dance and rap to again?
He's actually working on his whole album. It's called Black Disney right now. Like after Walt Disney, it's called Black Disney, and it's amazing. It brings you back the nostalgia of real hip hop and real music. Times when you wanted to dance and you wasn't just mean mugging, just looking around. Saying you were actually enjoying yourself, having fun. And that's what I loved about my brother's music. Coming from that whole Uptown MCA experience with Andre Harrell, Puff Daddy, George Harrell, Jimmy Jenkins, and all those guys over there.
So that's amazing. You were surrounded by wonderful people who really poured not only into the culture, but poured into the system worldwide. So being around so many amazing and influential people, what was the most important or the biggest lesson that you learned from those individuals being a roadie for your brother, Father MC?
Well, what I did learn was hard work ethic. One thing about me, and I was just talking to my friend Jeff, he's one of the lead singers in Intro, Kenny, Jeff, and Buddy, and we were talking Saturday night. And one thing about me was when I was on the road, I never looked down like I was an opening act. My brother was an opening act. I mean, not an opening act, a closing act, and you guys were an opening act, and I didn't correspond. We didn't network with each other. You feel what I'm saying? So I learned the process of what network is, because your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth. You know what I'm saying? Well, whatever way you want to look at it. So it just showed me how to be enduring mentally and physically. When somebody tells you no, you always know that there's a yes, because my brother was a walking testimony. He used to work at Kentucky Fried Chicken. They used to call him the Chicken Man, and they used to laugh at him when he said, I was going to get a record deal. I'm going to get a record deal. And all of a sudden, you look on Video Music Box and you see treat them like they want to be treated. They're like, oh, what? You know what I'm saying? So I learned from the best, and I learned from myself that never take no. Don't let anybody else kill your dreams because their dreams didn't come true.
I love it. I'm just going to share a personal story with you. So, yes, I knew that your brother, Father MC, worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken because he worked alongside my best friend. And
really? Wow.
Yes. And I recall the day. Yes, I recall the day in college when we were looking at, I think it was Video Music Box.
Yep.
And the video came on, and she was like, "Oh my gosh! Like, I used to work next to him frying chicken at Kentucky Fried Chicken." I was like, "Stop playing! No, you didn't."
Oh man.
And she was like, yeah, we used to tease him because he was telling us, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And we was like, no, just fry that chicken extra crispy and keep it going, So
And that's the problem. A lot of people, it goes down to your parents. Your parents could be your biggest dream killers. And I heard that from Spike Lee himself, where he was saying that I believe, I don't want to chop up the story, but I believe his grandmother said, Spike, I believe in you, and gave him her credit cards to start, 40 Acres and a Mule. And all of a sudden you have Spike, who's a well-renowned director, actor, just philanthropist, everything. So this goes back to, your dreams are your dreams. When you go to sleep at night, you go to sleep by yourself. When you dream at night, those are your dreams. When you have nightmares, those are your nightmares. So don't let anyone try to divert you from doing what you want to do in life.
That's an important lesson for people to understand. I didn't get that lesson until I was about maybe in my 30s. I knew that I wanted to be in entertainment. My parents had me in dance classes and voice classes. I ran track. But then they were just like, no, you have to go to college and you have to study something that's academic. So, I wanted to make them proud. So I went to college and, got degrees in psychology. And then I realized this isn't really what I want to do. So you're absolutely right. Even your family and your parents can be dream killers, and it's up to the individual to own their greatness and tap into it and say, you know what, I want to do something about it. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yep. That's true. You can't make this world by yourself. You're going to leave by yourself,
So true. So true. But I just want to kind of fast forward a little bit because, a lot of people are curious about the journey that you experienced before we actually saw The Godfather of Harlem on Epix. So let's just go back to all of the prep work that you had. So in African culture, we often heard of a person called a griot, and the griot would pass down history by telling us stories. Now, you had sort of like a modern day griot, and the granddaughter of Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson, his granddaughter, Margaret, who would invite you over to Sunday dinner so she can tell you about her grandfather. I'm a person who's very visual. I love to live in the moment. So what I was thinking about for the past week is I want to be a fly on the wall. Can you just walk us briefly through the first Sunday dinner that you had with Margaret when she started telling you about her grandfather, Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson? Tell us about that first dinner.
So Margaret was introduced to me through my cousin. His name is Tony Dunlop. Tony Dunlop's mother was Margaret's best friend. And Margaret took a liking to me back in 1997, 98. And I used to come over there every Sunday just to check on her. Tony's an attorney right now, so he was off going to law school and everything of that sort. So I used to come up there to Lenox Terrace, and we used to just sit down and just talk. And it wasn't even really dinner. It was just a conversation. I used to bring her, her favorite sandwich was beef tongue. So I would bring her beef tongue or some fish or whatever she may want, right? And we would just talk about just life in general. And she used to tell me these magical stories about Harlem, how she used to walk out a tenement and smell fresh laundry hanging out a window, or walk past 125th Street and you'll see James Brown's name on top of a marquee, or walk past Sugar Ray Robinson's barbershop and look inside, you might see Jackie Wilson sitting there, or Nat King Cole getting a haircut. And it was just these magical stories she used to tell me. But she also used to tell me about how African Americans migrated from the South, some going to DC, some going to Virginia, some going to New York. But racism was still racism. It didn't matter if you left the South. You left the Bull Connor South with the dogs, the water hoses, and all of that sort of the sittings, but it was still happening up north. She gave me examples like a black individual, African American individual might walk into a hat store and the owner may say, "No, you got to put a shower cap on your head to try on that hat." Or African American family may want to just get a steak dinner. They worked hard all week, a Sunday dinner, and the owner is saying, "No, you can't sit down. You have to get takeout." So that was still happening in Harlem at the time. And she also used to mention about her grandfather. His name was Ellsworth Raymond Johnson. He was from Charleston, South Carolina. He was born in 1905, birthday on Halloween. And he was literally born to raise hell. So he didn't just come up to migrate to Harlem to be a gangster. He actually had a dream like everyone else. He wanted to become an attorney, such as what Malcolm X wanted to do. That's why they're so parallel with their dreams and their aspirations. So uh, Ellsworth, before he was even Bumpy, just Ellsworth, went to City College and applied for financial aid. And the bursars was like, we don't give financial aid to colored folks. So he said, you know what? I'm going to make you eat your words. So he went and did what he can do. Like, he became part of the streets, the street element, and people started knowing him as Bumpy Johnson. He was the first African American gangster that was able to sit down with Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, Vito Genovese, Frank Costello. These are the legendary five families of New York, the Italians that started off in Pleasant Avenue. He comes from that era. So they didn't look at him as being just the N-word. They looked at him as being a smart African American colored person or a Negro who was able to be the liaison from Pleasant Ave, the drugs coming from Pleasant Ave to Harlem. They knew he went up against Dutch Schultz in the Harlem Renaissance. Even the warden on Alcatraz said that when Bumpy was on Alcatraz, he had the highest IQ he ever saw for a colored person. So, fast forward, she wanted the real story to be told about her grandfather. She didn't want these stories you saw, the Cotton Club or Hoodlum, and Hoodlum was a cult classic. My showrunner, Chris Brancato and Paul Eckstein, that was the first film they did coming out of college. With Lawrence Fishburne, Cicely Tyson, Vanessa Williams. But she wanted the story told about who he really was, not what you saw in American Gangster that was so embellished. He didn't die in an electronics store in front of 50 RCA TVs talking about Pepsi is the best product. He actually died in my character's arms at this restaurant called Wells because he had congestive heart failure. So I made her a promise back then. It's almost 20 years that I would go out and get this project done. 6 years later, her stepmother, Mamie, did a book with an individual by the name of Karen Hunter, right? But Margaret didn't have anything to do with that process. Margaret wanted to tell the story through her eyes. So they developed a screenplay called Daddy's Little Girls. And with that screenplay in mind, I said, you know what? We're going to go out there and tell the story through your perspective, through your eyes. That's why Demi Singleton is featured in The Godfather of Harlem, showing Demi growing up and the relationship with Mamie and Elise.
I love it. That was nostalgic for me. I'm just a forever perpetual student and learner. So I love just hearing about the times before me and how they impacted today. And I think a lot more people nowadays need to really sit down at the feet of their elders and just say, tell me where you came from so that I can know where I am and where I'm going. So I'm glad.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Margaret was such a wonderful person. She was very feisty. If she loved you, she loved you. If she hated you, she hated you. That's what she was. She was unapologetic. The Johnson bloodline definitely ran through her. If you can, it's all public knowledge. You can go look in newspapers. I remember one summer, she used to be in front of Lenox, up and down Lenox Avenue in her motorized wheelchair with her dog. She had a poodle who was mangy and had one eye, and it was so funny, right? I happened to be in California at the time, and a guy came downstairs. Well, she came downstairs, and a guy tried to mug her, and she had a 357, and she pulled it out, shot him in the ass. He ran into McDonald's, and he was bleeding. I think he was shot him in the elbow and the ass. Police came, asked Margaret where she was going. She said she was on her way to the gun range. Monday morning, you see she's got the front cover of the I don't know if it was the Post or the Daily News, and you see her and her younger ages holding a Uzi. So she was very, very unapologetic. Like, if she loved you, she loved you. If she hated you, she just hated you. And I'm glad that we, as a team, meaning Paul Eckstein, meaning Chris Brancato, the showrunner, meaning Jim Atchison, my partner, meaning Nina Yang Bon Jovi, they all got an opportunity, including Forrest, to meet Margaret while she was still alive. And she already gave me the blessings and said, I want you to go out there and get it done for me. And you made me this promise, make it happen. But she also met the individuals behind it. So it's not one of those Hollywood stories, she passed away and then these guys didn't get a chance to talk to her and meet her and everything like that. we all broke bread. And they all knew who she was, and it was just a wonderful experience. That now she's in heaven looking down. She's looking down, probably saying, "Yeah, you guys, my village actually made it happen."
I love it. I love it. The legacy that people leave. I think that that's what life is really about. You know,
Yep.
you live this life for yourself. You live this life to pour into the universe so that when you do transition, your name and your work still lives on. So I just want to applaud you for just continuing the legacy of the Johnson family and also for being responsible about it too, because I know when you're pitching to Hollywood, you know, oftentimes when they think about the Black culture, they want to see the gangster movies. So I'm glad that you wanted to show Bumpy Johnson in a different way. So let's just talk about the pitch. You had something to say?
Yeah, I was saying, well, that's the only way that it could have been done because, and this will fall back into your question about the pitch, basically because you want to tell a show when you're going out to studios and networks, you have to do what I call a fog cutter show, the show that cuts through the fog of everything else that's going on right now. Netflix has a bunch of shows, but every show on Netflix is not A1. You know, it's like an ocean filled with plastic bags or bottles floating around, right? So whatever story you have and the narrative has, it has to have a great A story, a B story, a C story. It has to be compelling. It has to be like, no, we saw this before. You want us to invest $1 to $100 million? We saw this before. It's all about the ROI when you're talking to the suits. ROI for all you listeners means return on investment. If I give you $20, what is my return on my $20? So when we went out to pitch, we were like, at first Chris was like, oh, we did this before, so it was me and Paul and Jim. We just started developing the project. I got in contact with Nina. Nina said, I love what you guys are talking about. Let's talk to Forrest. Forrest committed as a producer, as an EP, but he didn't commit as an actor. I'm an actor, so I totally understood. He was like, oh, it's a great project, but I have to read something to see how it jumps out of the pages on me so I can, smell, I can feel, the character could be part of me. So it took us about 6 months of kind of like really developing it, me and Paul and Jim. And fast forward, Chris said maybe about 8 months later, like, I want to be part of this, but this is how we can tell the story. So collectively, we decided to say, we're not going to tell the Harlem Renaissance. You saw that before. We're not going to tell about the Flappers and Dutch Schultz and Prohibition. We're going to tell it about one of the most tumultuous times in African-American history, which was in the 60s, in the present. Think about it. Just a couple of years ago, Emmett Till just got brutally executed, So he said, Bumpy came home in 1963. Let's tell that story, how he came to a new world, and he's an elder gangster trying to reclaim what he has. And he's also tortured and tormented of trying to transition from being wrong, which he knows what he's doing wrong, into being right. So that's how we came up with the log line of the collision of civil rights and the underworld.
I love it. So let me ask you a question because I'm not sure. So when you started writing, or your team started writing The Godfather of Harlem, was Hoodlum already out or no?
Oh man, Hoodlum I was still in I was just getting off a tour. If you think about it, Hoodlum came out in the maybe 1997, 1998.
Okay.
Godfather of Harlem, we just started in 2016.
Got you.
Yeah. Hoodlum is your cult classic. That was Chris. That's when Chris and Paul cut their teeth on their first film with Lawrence Fishburne, with Vanessa Williams, Cicely Tyson. Godfather of Harlem. It took me 18 years to get to 2016 to where we were able to start developing and pitching it and going out to get it sold.
And word on the street is that once you started pitching, you were told no 1,000 times. I believe that no's are lessons and teachable moments. I just want you to focus on one time that you were told no and how that no affected and impacted the way that you pitched to the next person. Talk about that resounding no.
Well, I have to correct you. I got told 1,000 times as an actor, no, right?
Okay.
You can't get told 1,000 times no when you're pitching, because there's only but certain many places that you can go to. Once you get a no at one place, that's it. It stops dead on the wall. It's like you can't go back to Warner Brothers after Warner Brothers said no. We already told you no. Myself
Mhm.
as an actor and as a creator, I was told no by so many casting directors. I had to create my own destiny, create my own lane. And even when Godfather of Harlem did get sold as an actor, I still had to audition for my role and my part. But it made me feel, I like the hustle. I like the way it feels. Like, it makes me feel like motivated. Myself and Forrest, we used to run lines in the summertime. That's my big brother. I used to sit down and have conversations after hours, and he'd be like, don't worry about it. Everything will be all right. I believe in you. So the no's we got for the show were, we only can go a certain, when you're selling a show, you only can go a certain amount of places. You don't want to have a show and just throw it up against the wall, and wherever it sticks, what I'm saying, you'll go to it. Like I wouldn't go to Lifetime with Godfather of Harlem because it wouldn't make sense. I wouldn't go to the Nat Geo network because it wouldn't make sense. So we got turned down by 3 networks going out to pitch, and 3 networks is a lot. Where it says, my showrunner told me, he said it was a noble failure, right? And I understood what he was trying to say, but I didn't understand it because I didn't have a plan B. I only had a plan A. Forrest can go get another Academy Award for another movie. My showrunner can go write another amazing hit. My other writer can just go write another crazy great project. With me, this was like no plan B. If I failed, I'll just be hitting cement. I didn't have a safety net. So there was an individual who just came from Steven Spielberg's group, Michael Wright. And Michael is an amazing person. And Forrest and Chris and Paul, after he got turned down by the 3 networks, this was the following year. It was like after New Year's. It was like in February, and I was really in a funk. I was just like, what am I going to do now? I mean, like, I put my all into it. And they had a meeting with Michael, and Michael was like, you know what? I don't want to be coy about this. We have the money. Let's get this made. This story needs to be told. And they bought it in a room. So to get a series bought in a room is like unheard of. It's like a hole in one. And we got the series bought in the room, and then we still had to negotiate and make sure the business aspect was right, because as African American content comes out, there was always that urban legend that says we don't sell well overseas internationally. So you have to, and I spoke to the studio heads and was like, well, you can't say that about Black Panther. Well, that was an anomaly. You know what I'm saying? So, right now we're in a state of America with diverse content, and I think we should have always bet on Black. I mean, I look at it like this as a creator. I just don't like Black narratives. I like all narratives. I was the young kid watching Rebel Without a Cause and Once Upon a Time in America about Jewish gangsters and on the waterfront and Raging Bull. So I just don't like Black content. I like good content. I'm not limiting myself just to listen to R&B music. I might like to hear soft rock or like to hear gospel. You know what I'm saying? That's the part of being a creator. So he decided to buy it in a room, and then we had to go through the steps of just negotiations with our studio. The amazing Tracy Underwood, who was up at ABC Signature, and Pat Moran, who was there at the time. They really helped us, and it was really good, man, to see the president of ABC and all the execs in pitch meetings with us. That's hardly never done. So we're sitting in pitch meetings with people who believe in our show. Doesn't have to be the same complexion or the same race. They just believe in the story, and the story needs to be told. And that was just an amazing feeling. And me being the youngest African American executive producer on the team, of course I get hazed a lot, because it's just growing pains. But I got a wonderful tribe around me, man. I got Paul Eckstein, I got Chris Brancato, I got Jim Atchison, I have Joanne Colano, his wife, who's Forrest's manager. I have Forrest Whitaker, I have Nina Yang Bon Jovi, Michael Wright. I couldn't be happier to be in a better place as Epix, because we could have went to Netflix and just got lost somewhere. So when we went to a boutique company that does great stuff, puts out great content, they tend to focus more on you. You feel what I'm saying? That's why when you look at billboards in Brooklyn and in LA and You're taking the subway, you see Godfather of Harlem everywhere because they really believed in the project. So big shout out to everybody at Epix who was behind this, everybody at ABC Signature and my team.
Nice, nice. You know, my next line of questioning involved people having the right network, but you just said a word and I was like, you know what? I like that word better than network. You mentioned your tribe, right? So how important is having a strong tribe for people who want to enter into the entertainment world? Because they say that Hollywood is small and it's not about who you know, but who knows you. So just talk about building up your tribe as you enter into entertainment or Hollywood.
Well, to be honest with you, your tribe has to be, let's just get Hollywood out of the picture. Your tribe in life, waking up in the morning time, you need someone to inspire you. You can't be the only lion in the tribe. You can't be the only one that's willing to go out there and hunt and risk getting hurt and coming back with meat in your mouth and feeding everybody else. You could teach people how to fish, right? But there's a lot of people nowadays, they want you to teach them how to fish. Okay, take the fish, fillet the fish, season the fish, and even have the nerve to tell you to feed them the fish. You feel what I'm saying? So in whatever business you do, whether it's Hollywood, I don't care whether it's family, whether you're in the medical field, whether you in the law enforcement field, you have to have strong individuals with the same mind state as you who are willing to say, you know what, we're going to get this done by any means necessary.
I love it. And something that you also mentioned when you were talking about Forrest Whitaker, you said that although you knew Forrest, even when you presented him with the idea of acting in The Godfather of Harlem, he said, well, I need to see the script first. So even though you have a tribe and they may be doing the same thing as you, don't rely upon them for favors just because they're in your tribe. Everyone needs to go at it and go out there and get it for themselves and then bring it back to the community. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Absolutely. Even when I'm on set and I'm in my role, I have a great tribe around me, like Elvis Nolasco, like Eric Larray, Il Finesh, Antoinette, Grace, Nigel, Vincent, Giancarlo, the list goes on. These Rosalind Ruff, these individuals, they're there for each other. There's something that we see that somebody's doing wrong. We be like, yo, listen, they'll tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, maybe you don't need to block the light like this, and we could just come right here and we could just feed off each other, which is really amazing. There's no egos in this. We all here for the same purpose.
Got it. Something that I was telling someone the other day just about the tribe, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. Giving feedback and advice and suggestions and not putting your ego in the way and thinking that they're telling you something bad. I think that's an important and also a teachable moment for others. If you turn around to your tribe and you try to pour into your tribe and they take it as something negative, I think that you need to reevaluate your tribe, because aren't you supposed to give feedback and suggestions? I think that's important.
Absolutely. You don't need any yes person around you. A yes woman, a yes man, a yes dog. You don't need no yeses around you. There's a saying I always say that sometimes in life you got to turn your circle into squares. And when I say square, like, for example, the old vocabulary is a person that's square is the guy that gets up every morning, he goes to work, and he's just a square guy, right? And the gangsters are like the ones that are around you in your circle, right? So I learned, growing up, that I had to turn my circle into squares, because when you run with wolves, all you learn how to do is howl. But when you run with eagles, you learn how to fly.
That's a word right there. I love it. So, just talking about expanding or tapping in or creating your tribe. I love that word. I just want to kind of go back a little bit, because you spent a significant number of years working on BET's 106 in Park. At that point, you're seeing celebrities come in and out. Did you start to add to your tribe or your network at that point? And did they help you as you were pitching this project, The Godfather of Harlem?
Not at all, because you got to remember, I grew up in that. So that's just like a nursing blood. And it's like, oh my God, it's blood. That's what you used to. Like, I wasn't working at BET for that. Matter of fact, I was working at BET because I was going to court and I had to have a job, And when I was working at BET, I mean, it was interesting. It was another journey in my life, but it wasn't it was a lot of bad trials and tribulations just like anywhere else, you know. So I wasn't, no, let me network with this person, network with that person. I was always, I had a motto, I'm a boss, so I only talk to bosses, man. So I was always developing projects within myself, you know, at BET. You know, I'll be in my cubicle doing work that I didn't want to do. I just got tired. I was like, you know what? I don't need a grown man telling me that I got to come back from lunch at 12:30. You know what? I don't need somebody telling me, well, you're not back from a smoke break, even though I don't smoke, but you're not back. You got to be back. You know, I didn't need that. I didn't need to wake up Sunday and say, regret that I got to go to work on Monday and I got to put in, if you have your dreams, those are your dreams, those are your aspirations. You know, there's plenty of times I worked at BET. I was trying to kind of elevate and do other things, and people didn't take me seriously. So I had to, figure it out myself. So to answer your question, I wasn't into that. Like, because I just left the road with people, I come from that life, you know what I'm saying? They'd be like, hey, Markuann, what's up? Or they call me Silk. They'd be like, Silk, what's up? So people that actually walked in to BET, to 106 and Park, to do all these shows like BET Next, BET Tonight, or I knew a majority of people in the music industry just from the fact of the matter, this is what I do. This was a career for me. This wasn't just a passing hobby. Like, hey, I'm all googly-eyed and starry-eyed and like, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? This is something I've always done. I just had to take the longer path.
Got it. But I've always heard that the definition of success is when preparation meets opportunity. Let's just assume that an individual was working, let's say at 106 and Park, if it was still, in existence today. Would you suggest that they kind of stop celebrities as they come in if they know that they want to leverage their career, or should they just kind of fall back? What would you suggest to them?
You have to be very careful when you do things like that, because you have to understand that individuals put on their pants the same way you put on your pants every day, right? And they have lives too. And you have to always be professional in whatever you do. If you're on set and you're talking to Forrest Whitaker about selling a book or trying to get a book deal or do an interview, which he may look at you totally different. Like, we're all one individual. You take that after hours and you do it somewhere else. You don't bring that to your job. And I've seen people get fired actually for that, because that's almost kind of like a groupie, as they would say in the industry, like a groupie type of, you're here to do a job. You can't be a bodyguard whispering, hey, I'm an actor, like, you think you can get me in your next film? That doesn't work like that, And even with me, I get a lot of DMs and emails and, people asking me to put me on. I'm like, put you on? Like, if you knew what I had to get to put myself on, even as an actor, as an executive producer, I had to audition for my own role, and you expect me to go put you on? Okay. That shows me right there that you are an opportunist, number one. You don't have respect for somebody's craft, number two. And you like microwave dinners. I like dinners that are cooked. You want the fast, we want the fast result. I want something that's slow burn. You know how jerk chicken tastes? You got to turn it over in the, you know what I'm saying? So I would advise people not to do that, because people will not take you seriously, and word spreads around in our profession.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. And the reason why I asked you that question is because it seems that we live in this microwave era. I don't want to blame it all on social media, but people really believe that, leveraging their career or getting to a place of success, it happens overnight, and they can just ask a question and they're just going to be granted a favor, and not fully understanding that they have to work for it. I'd rather be around individuals who had to work for what they currently have than an individual who just got it due to a favor, because there is no work ethic. They lack humility, and those are the type of people that I just don't want to be around.
Yeah, I really try to stick, because even when I have these platforms and people ask me, well, what should I do? You need to go learn your craft. Go to Barnes and Nobles. I love Barnes and Nobles. To me, that's like two things I love. I like going to the gym, and I like going to Barnes and Nobles and movies, So go to Barnes and Nobles and get producing for dummies, or writing for dummies, or acting for dummies. Learn your craft. Learn when to speak and when not to speak. You feel what I'm saying? When you're at a table and you're eating food, it's not polite to open your mouth and chew, and you know, you have to have manners, you have to have etiquette, whatever you do. If you want to approach somebody, you do that on your own time, and however it happens, let that happen, but don't let that affect your job, because then people are not going to take you seriously.
Exactly. Study your craft. You know, I was I was on 14th Street. I believe it was last week, and I went inside Barnes and Noble, one of my favorite places too. Yeah. And I was talking to my daughter. She was like, "Why are you so excited?" I said, "Do you not understand that the Starbucks section is now open, so I can now get a book and sit down and read?"
I get my what is it, my dragon fruit lemonade, and I could just sit there and just read, you know.
Oh, that is so delicious. I'm hooked on the dragon fruit lemonade. But, you know, let's just tap into The Godfather of Harlem a little bit. You know, it premiered on the Epix channel on September 29th, 2019. And as we discussed earlier on in this conversation, it was very different. It felt very innovative. It felt very refreshing and new, because we saw an intersection of troubling times, not only in the 60s when the Godfather of Harlem is chronicled, but it also parallels a lot of what is going on today. We saw the civil rights movement, and we also saw the plight of the LGBTQ community. Was it intentional for you to include those two type of storylines in The Godfather of Harlem?
I mean, it's, you know, when you're in a writer's room and you're sitting down with 6 or 7 or 8 writers, you know, people bounce ideas off the wall all the time, right? And you have to say like this, right? History repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not embellishment. These movements actually really happened, that started in the 60s. You know, it's parallel to what's happening right now. If you think about it, think about the Harlem riots. You know, James Powell, that's George Floyd all over again. The Harlem riots is Ferguson all over again. If you saw episode 3 that just premiered Sunday, the fruit stand riot, this is what we're going through: police brutality. You know, Colin Kaepernick is their Muhammad Ali. You know, he was an athlete that stood for something. So it wasn't intentionally done. It was just done because it needed to be done. It wasn't like we're just going to put it in because it sounds good. No, it's about history repeating itself, and it's a great story. So it's no embellishment. So we're here to not only entertain, but educate. And I have a word I like to say, which is called edutainment. I like to entertain and educate at the same time. So education doesn't have to be boring where you're falling asleep. You know, now we're doing a TV series where your family, the elders can watch it with you, right? As well as the young people can watch it with you. And we can get both generations together, at least for one night on a Sunday, right? You know what I'm saying? When everybody else is busy, we could sit down and have that intimacy, like, wow, Dad, I didn't know that happened in the 60s. You know what I'm saying? But still have the cool music like the Rick Ross, and then you could still hear the Sam Cooke and the Jackie Wilson and the HER and Martha and the Vandellas and DMX, and the list goes on.
Yeah, I love it. And just like you said, like, I'm able to sit down with my daughter. We watch it together.
Yeah, exactly.
Season 1, every single episode, we watch it together, we unpack it, we discuss it, because there are things that she doesn't understand. There are things that I don't even understand, so I have to rely upon my elders to say, can you explain that period a little bit more for me? So I'm glad that it's sparking a conversation amongst generations who are now.
I also have to give a big, huge shout out to my elder, Professor James Small. And Professor James Small is one of the, to me, he's my hero. He's an African American historian that actually lived in that time, that I brought in to consult on the Godfather of Harlem. Because when Malcolm X passed away, he became Malcolm X's sister's bodyguard. So he was there, and he's on set with us like all the time, making sure, whether it's cold, whether it's raining, making sure that Nigel is in character, and what you're seeing is not just Hollywood embellishment, but what he can remember from, you know, reading Alex Haley's novels, from, you know, from him being there. You know, he sits down with Grace, who's playing Betty Shabazz. You know, he consults with me and lets me know exactly what was happening in that whole being, that whole 60s, you know, where he was at.
You know, I went like that because you mentioned Dr. Betty Shabazz. I just want to share another personal story. I remember when I first entered college, and my English class, we had to write an essay where we compared and contrasted Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And you couldn't tell me that I didn't know about Malcolm X. I started writing. I entered into the classroom, and my professor, she looked at me and she said, honey, let me tell you something. I need you to meet me at Abyssinian Church. She gave me the date and the time, and she didn't say anything else. I said, okay. So I traveled from Long Island. I met her at Abyssinian Church, and I'm walking down the church's aisle, and I see her, but I see this woman's back, and she had on this hat. And when I got in front of her, it was Dr. Betty Shabazz. And she said, oh, you really want to know about my husband so that you can write a better essay? Have a seat. And I was just, I broke down and cried because once again, the griots, the historian.
It's so important. Yeah, it's so important. I wouldn't have done this unless Forrest wouldn't have either. We didn't have, it's a little good to have Hollywood writers to do their research. Chris is good with that. Paul is good with that. I've been to the Schomburg Museum, spending nights there, with a friend of mine, Tony Gentry, just going through microfilm and getting as much research from Ebony magazines, the Amsterdam News, Jet. It wasn't that many, articles out there about Bumpy or Junie Bird or Nat Pettigrew. You can try to snatch up as much as you can, but to be able to really move forward, I wanted to have an elder that can really oversee everything and just say, you guys are doing it right or you guys are doing it wrong. And I always have to give homage to Professor James Small. And he has these wonderful presentations on YouTube called Hidden Colors. So everybody should check it out.
I'll definitely check it out. I'm always looking for content that's thought-provoking, content that I can share with my daughter because I just want her to be, civically engaged and socially conscious and a contributor to this culture. So thank you for mentioning that. But we talked about two storylines, the civil rights movement and the plight of the LGBTQ community. Now, it is also alleged that Bumpy Johnson had an affair with, what's her name, Amy Vanderbilt?
It was Helen Lawson and Amy Vanderbilt. There were two Caucasian women that, allegedly rumors were that he had affairs with. And to tell you the truth, man, Bumpy was a charismatic guy. I mean, like princesses and princes came to Harlem to see him. Dictators, Fidel Castro just stayed at the Hotel Teresa because they wouldn't grant him a place to stay downtown. So he came uptown to stay. I mean, it's not a myth about him being a person of power that women were attracted to. There's even rumors out there that Dutch Schultz's sister is really Elise's mother. So those are some of the rumors that are out there. Not saying I don't know if it's true or not, but the older guys tell you that, and if the older guys are still around, they're like in their 90s and they were still babies in the 60s when Bumpy died in 1968. So yeah, there is some facts from that. I spoke to Margaret. Lena Horne dated Bumpy Johnson at one time. Helen Lawson, she was a socialite. Amy Vanderbilt. Bumpy was a likable guy. I mean, you got to remember, he wasn't your average gangster. He read Shakespeare. He read Nietzsche. It's urban legend he beat Bobby Fischer in chess. He was a well-dressed individual. He was a man of the world. I mean, think about it. To be in Alcatraz, that's the prisons of prisons. That's like the cum laude of prisons. You know what I'm saying? That's like anybody that went to Alcatraz was the worst individuals in America. So people didn't know just Bumpy in Harlem. They knew him across the United States. So yeah, there were legends and stories that and it was in Helen Lawson's book. I believe it was a book that she wrote that actually she mentioned Bumpy Johnson and her quick relationship with him.
So how do you think the world would have responded if you would have really explored that storyline of the affairs that Bumpy Johnson had? Because in the series, you mentioned the intimate conversations or the flirting that Adam Clayton Powell Jr. did. If you had infused those storylines a little bit more, how do you think the world would have reacted to it?
I mean, it's the reality. I mean, like, an African American man having a relationship with a white woman in the 60s. I mean, it happened. You remember Sammy Davis Jr. got married to a white woman. These things really happened. We didn't. We dived into that just to show that Bumpy was a man, and things like this happen. Just like Mamie, things like that happened with Doug Jones allegedly. You feel what I'm saying? This wasn't just a perfect marriage. They were trying to get back together. I mean, Bumpy was gone for 13 years. This was something that happened before him and Mamie were actually really together. You feel what I'm saying? This was a love from the past coming in. Imagine missing your spouse for 13 years. It's not going to come back and everything is just smooth and we're back off to where we left at. In the beginning of the series, she's like, I need you to tell me what you went through. And a lot of guys that I know that did time in jail, it was like, yo, wow, that was so real. What did you go through in jail? What happened to you? What did you endure? Before we could even get intimate with each other, I need to know what it was, what happened to you. You know what I'm saying? So we try to tell it as accurate as possible. A lot of it is, some of it is embellishment. If you watch Godfather, when it first comes on, there's a disclaimer that says, some of this is based on true events, blah, 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 blah. This is not a documentary. We're not telling a documentary. We're telling a TV series.
Got it. Because oftentimes when people look at television, that's the gospel. They're like, oh, that's true. That really happened. So
yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned
it's entertainment. That's what TV is. If you want to watch a documentary, you should have watched the making but beyond what is it? By Any Means Necessary, the making of the Godfather of Harlem or whatever. That was a documentary that we just got an NAACP award for. That was during the COVID. We did that documentary. That was more historical. I heard Forrest told me they're up for a NAMIC award. That was Forrest Whitaker and Keith McWhirter and Nina Yang Bon Jovi. They did a documentary because we knew everybody was waiting for the Godfather of Harlem to come back, but it was hard for us to shoot during COVID. We got pushed back. So what we did, we created a documentary, a 4-part documentary to take up that time so people can actually see the historical aspect of it.
I didn't even know that existed. Where can I find that documentary?
On Epix.
Really?
Yeah, but it's called By Any Means Necessary, the making of the Godfather of Harlem, or the Times of the Godfather of Harlem. You'll see it as a documentary. It's on Disney Plus, it's on Hulu, it's on Amazon Prime, it's on Epix. It's a 4-part series.
I had no idea. I'm going to be honest. The only reason why I watch Epix is to watch The Godfather of Harlem. So
Epix has some great. Epix has really. I'm not just saying that because Epix is our home. Epix has some great programming. I mean, it depends on what you're into. It's like that best kept secret that you really don't tune into. But now that the Godfather of Harlem is there and we're their flagship show, we did 35% more viewership on our second season first premiere than our season finale from the first season. And I think we got like over 3 million viewers that are just watching it at night. If I don't want to hold me to that, but it's around that, and I know that we're doing very, very well. And I'm glad the community is supporting us and that we're telling stories that can entertain and educate.
Yeah. The community is definitely watching, and it is entertaining us. It is educating us. People, for me, were really excited. They're like, oh, you're going to have a conversation with Markuann. I'm like, yeah. So they are just super excited when I put this on the streaming platform. But just to talk about another storyline, because, I still live in New York City. You still live in New York, Markuann?
I'm in between LA and New York.
Okay, cool. But, for those who come to New York City for the first time, I want to go to Harlem. I want to go to the Apollo Theater. And they think that the way that Harlem is now, even though it's becoming more gentrified than ever, they think that it was the Black Mecca, which it was. But during that time of the Godfather of Harlem, we saw the intersection of the cultures. We saw the prisms of culture. We saw African Americans. We saw Spanish, Latin Americans, and we saw the Italians. When you were studying these 3 different cultures and you were all writing the Godfather of Harlem, what did you learn about how those 3 cultures interacted and lived together in Harlem during those times?
Well, it's basically a tale of 3 cities. You had Spanish Harlem, you had down on Pleasant Avenue, you had the Italian Harlem, and then you had Central Harlem and West Harlem, which was the African Americans. Different cultures, different people, different beliefs. talking to some of the old Italian gangsters, they didn't look at saying the N-word was really disrespectful. It was just like, this is what we do. They call us this, we call them that. You feel what I'm saying? So you learn a lot, you know, and it's great that you can be in one place. And if you want to get an icy from Poppy, you can go down to Spanish Harlem. If you want to get some soul food, you can go up to Sylvia's. You know, if you want to get a good Italian pizza, you can go to Patsy's. You know what I'm saying? It's the fact of the matter. In this inlet, you have different cultures, different people. You know, you want the Dominican food, go up to the Heights. You know what I'm saying? And that's the beauty of learning about Harlem. You know what I'm saying? Harlem is a mecca. If you go anywhere and you mention Harlem, people want to come to Harlem. You know, people want to come uptown. You know, there's a song that says, "Take me uptown, get me on the A train, take me uptown." Bobby Womack has a song, "Across 110th Street." You know, it's so much culture in Harlem. It's so much history out there.
It is. It is. You know, Harlem is just culture filled, but you know, I'm glad that the Godfather of Harlem just kind of chronicles a Harlem that we never knew, or I never knew. And it is so important that not only that we read about it, but we're seeing it in television and film, so that this generation coming up can be educated a lot more. But I also want you to talk about the sacrifices you had to make. You know, people now see you as this superstar who brought, you know, a very important series to Epix, but they may not know the sacrifices. They see your glory, but they don't know your story. So talk about some of the sacrifices you had to make.
I tell people this at all time, and I'm so serious about it. Don't look at my breakthrough. Look what I've been through. A lot of people want success, and you could say you want success, but you're not ready for success. If you're not ready to humble yourself and eat a tuna fish sandwich because you can't afford anything else, or eat ramen noodles, if you're not ready to humble yourself and sleep on somebody's floor or somebody's couch because you can't afford a hotel, if you're not ready to humble yourself and be able to have to take a buddy pass, knowing that you have a meeting at Netflix at 8 a.m. on Monday and you have to try to get out at Sunday by any means necessary, whatever way you got to go to make it happen, you're not ready for success. So many people look at the microwave. They want it right away and not understand the magnetism, what it takes to go to where you are. It's many of nights I had to pay my rent with my American Express. And if you know about American Express, they'll cut you off in a minute. You feel what I'm saying? It's not a credit card, it's a charge card. You know what I'm saying? So many nights I had to do that. Many nights I had to wonder, like, where am I going? What am I going to do? Do I have to turn back to going back to the streets? I'm sitting here wondering how my rent is going to be paid. You know, people they don't see that aspect of it. You know what I'm saying? I tell people all the time, if you knock on opportunity's door and it doesn't open, go to Home Depot, buy some lumber, build your own door, and create your own entrance. You know, there's no bunk beds in the graveyard. When you leave this earth, you leave them by yourself. I am not going to be knocking on Sanya's door saying, "Hey, yo, it's time for us to go." No, you going, not me. You know what I'm saying? So tell people all the time, man, like, you know, if you want success, you got to go out there and get it. You got to be able to do things and be able to work harder than the next person. Because right now, Godfather Harlem, yeah, I'm very happy about it, but I'm also working on other projects. You know, you got to stay creating. As a creator, we stay creating. And I got to stay creating, because if I don't stay creating, I'm going to die. You know, I have to start that. That's what fuels me. That's what's the oxygen inside me, to stay creating and making wonderful narratives and stories for the people.
Love it, love it. You know, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I'm just talking about our culture, Black culture. Image is sometimes often everything. For me, it's not the most important thing at all, but for many people, it is. And they feel as if they have to put on this image just to show people what they're doing, instead of really humbling themselves and saying, "Listen, I'm not going to go shopping. You know, I'm not going to go out because I have to pay for this flight so I can meet someone else." So I'm glad that you mentioned that you definitely have to sacrifice. If you're not sacrificing something, I don't think that the rewards are going to come. So thank you for mentioning that.
No problem.
Now, let's talk about this new season.
Okay.
Just aired a few weeks ago. I'll be honest again, I've only watched the first episode of season 2 because my daughter hasn't been available and I have to wait for her, because like I told you, we watch it together.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about season 2 and why people should be tuned in.
Well, season two, man, I call it hell up in Harlem, man. It's a lot of things that's happening. You know, you have the French connection with the dope coming from Marseilles, and then you have Bumpy being on the run, and the mob has a hit on him. They put a big ticket on his head, and they're trying to execute him. And then you have, you know, Malcolm X's relationship with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and how, you know, how toxic it's starting to become with him being in the nation. You know, it's so many things that's happening in the season two, just elevating season one.
Any new additions to the cast that we would be pleasantly?
Yeah, we do have you know, we have Clifford, aka Method Man, playing a Philly gangster by the name of Sam Christian. We have Justin Bart, you might know him from Hangover. He's playing Robert Morgenthau. You have Anna, I forgot her last name, but she's in Daredevil. She plays Joseph Bonanno's his wife. We have some wonderful new cast, and then you have the cast of the past with us.
Nice. I'll definitely be tuned in. I told you the only reason why I haven't watched the other episodes is because my daughter has been unavailable, so I'm just waiting for her. But I also want to talk about, you know, this buzzword, and I'm just hoping that it isn't a buzzword and a trend in Hollywood: diversity and inclusion. As a content creator and the executive producer of Godfather of Harlem, how do you make sure that you have diversity and inclusion on set?
Man, myself and, you know, once again, I have a great team that's open to that. If they weren't open to that, I wouldn't be part of this project. Everybody on our team is open to diversity, and this is something that we preach, from myself, from Forrest, from Jim, from Joanne, to Nina, you know, to Paul, to Chris. We all preach diversity. In our writers' room, it's like the United Nations. We have different thoughts, different cultures, you know, different people, different aspects of life. You know, that's very important, you know. So Hollywood is talking about, you know, diversity, and, you know, we should have been talking about diversity. We should have been betting on Black. You know, like I said, it shouldn't take us staying home during this whole pandemic and seeing what's unfolding in front of us with this BLM movement and George Floyd and all this other stuff for you to really think about, okay, we need to be diverse. We should have been diverse. We all human beings with great stories, great past. It doesn't matter if you're white, you're Asian, you're African American, you're Caribbean. You know, we're all human beings.
Yeah. And this is why I check in. I have a mic check with content creators or anyone who is leading a brand. Just recently, well, maybe a few months ago, I walked into the Target here in downtown Brooklyn, and no lie, I walked in and they turned the entire front section into sort of like a Wakanda theme. And I said, well, can I talk to a manager real quick? And I said, can you just explain why now? I just want to make sure that you're not doing this because of everything that you're seeing in the media. And once again, you're just trying to monetize, our trauma and monetize our experience. I don't want our experience to be transactional,
Yep.
So I'm glad that, there is intent, there is purpose behind a content creator such as you on set to make sure that there is diversity.
We would not have it any other way. Trust and believe. I mean, this is a set of love. This is a set of people, from, I even give a big shout out to Vincent D'Onofrio. Before he even portrayed the character Vinny the Chin, he was very concerned about the way the character was being portrayed. And sometimes you have to fight racism with racism. I know who he is as a person, and he wanted to make sure that his audience knew as well too, that he's just an actor and he's a vessel portraying what was actually happening in the 60s at that time. You feel what I'm saying? Right. So this set is nothing but love from everyone. It's we're all one human being, and that's the way we look at it.
That's important. That is so important. And, I just encourage you to remain diligent and truthful, in our plight to make sure that there is equity in the diversity and inclusion conversation, especially when it comes to the images that we are seeing on television. I want to shift to social media, because social media, for some people, it is the beginning, it is the middle, it is the end of every single day. I took a look at your social media account, and it seems as if you aren't driven by the likes and the follows, and things seems organic. Talk about that a little bit more. Why?
Because I'm an organic, like Instagram is just an illusion to me. What you see is my life. I love clothes, I love fashion, I love to inspire people. I like to travel, I like food. I'm not on it for the likes. I'm not on it to model tummy tea and all kinds of other stuff that's on there. this is just me. You either gonna like me or you either gonna love me or not like me. That's what it is. You know, I don't have a blue verified check. I'm like, I don't even know why I don't have one. I am a creator, a content creator, but I guess in the world of social media, you have to be such and such and be doing such and such. I can't be any other person but me. I come from a place where I'm humble and I'm still humble. I know where I'm going. I know where I came from. I know what I'm about. So when you see me in social media, and you can follow me at Markuann on Instagram, I know that my followers are genuine. You know, I like that. They genuinely love if I post a picture of a pair of Air Jordans. Oh, those Jordans are nice. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to post me on an exotic island, and, you know, on a yacht or on a speedboat, and I'm actually in my house. You know, I'm not. I don't need it like that. You know, so social media, I love interacting with people, but people who have purpose, because everybody on social media doesn't have a purpose.
No, not at all. I know for me on social media, if anyone sends me a friend request, like I'm researching who you are, I'm researching who you're following. I might go on Google, I might do a background check, and then a month later, I'm like, okay, let me accept.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Markuann, it has been an absolute joy just unpacking your pivotal moments and milestones. We will definitely be tuned into The Godfather of Harlem. It is now in season 2, airing on the Epix channel. I might just go add that to my cable, you know, channel.
Yeah, I mean, it's really on Disney Plus as well too. Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Epix. We have it where you can watch the episodes for free on Xfinity. I think it's starting May 5th. You know, you can watch it. I think 7 days. We just did a deal with Tidal, a package deal. If you get Tidal, you can get Epix. Just check us out, man. Every Sunday at 9 o'clock, The Godfather of Harlem, season 2.
Got it, Markuann. Continued blessings. Thank you for being socially responsible and civically engaged as we continue this plight to make sure that there is diversity and inclusion, not only in television, but film, fashion, beauty, and music. Thank you so much for blessing my show for the second time.
Thank you so much for having me, Sanya. You have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.